Good morning all. My name's Dave Burrell. I'm going to talk to you about the Power Platform, more particularly how to enable your users, how to empower them, and hopefully result in some sort of innovation for your organisation. Sorry, I'm not moving the slides. There we go. So I'm the Managing Director for Innovate Consultant. We are a Power Platform specialist. We do a bit of work in Dynamics, which is what my background is. So I was working with Dynamics for the last 15 years, and more recently, specifically, the Power Platform. You can find me on Twitter, personal blog, website, or LinkedIn, so do feel free to connect. So, as Managing Director, I spend a lot of time working with fairly big clients. Generally, what happens is they adopt Office 365, they turn on Power Platform, and they lose control. So what we tend to find is we get a phone call or an email saying, how do we turn this off? We don't know what's happened, there's data leaving the business all over the place, we've got all these shadow IT systems, applications that have been built, we just need it off. Which is a difficult thing to do when you've got somebody like the BBC with 500-600 users already adopted it. So there's definitely some interesting challenges with there. How many people use the Power Platform? How many of you looked at governance, control, etc. before you started using it? And therein lies the problem. Most people turn it on, think this is great, we can quickly build really good enterprise level applications, and all of a sudden all of their colleagues start building applications and no one really knows where their data is going or what these applications are doing. So the Power Platform is an amazing tool. It's great for businesses to really quickly and rapidly deploy applications to meet immediate business problems. One of the biggest complaints within more so enterprise is we go to IT with a problem and they tell us it's going to cost us X amount of money and it's going to take them a year to get to the point where they just think about it because they have to go through all of this control and governance in order to work out is it the right application, etc., etc. So the Power Platform fits in great to that type of scenario where you're very easily to be able to build a really good enterprise level application using either Power Apps or a good automation using Power Automate, etc., without having to go through all of that effort of doing supplier selection, because most companies will already be incumbent with Microsoft. They've already got Office 365, so all the work to evaluate security and compliance has already been done. With that though, I'm going to be a bit geeky on this one. So with that, Power becomes a big responsibility, because all of a sudden you've enabled your users to build applications, more so from an IT point of view, that you no longer control. Is there anyone that's worked in an IT department? Do you like it when your users start implementing applications that you don't know about? No. And that is the biggest challenge. What happens when you've got a big user base who maybe aren't IT savvy, that all of a sudden have this ability to build applications that interact with data, that interact not just inside the organisation, but outside? How do you manage that? So, I'm going to tell a story. So I won't say which organisation it was. I got a call from an organisation who wanted to turn Power Platform off. So there was a user who thought it would be a great idea to build a nice Power Automate flow that celebrated their successes. So salesperson, they wanted to, on the winning of an opportunity, post out to Twitter to say, look at us, we're a great organisation, we've won this big massive opportunity. However, the happy cat turned into a very scared cat, and there was definitely an oh shit moment. So what it turned out they'd actually done was every time they created a new opportunity, it posted it to Twitter. This was fairly quickly picked up, but not quick enough that their competitors were not all over it. So all of a sudden, rather than celebrating successes, they were posting the prospects out of their CRM system into Twitter. And you'd imagine as a competitor, you're going to pick that up pretty quick. And you would imagine there's a lot of salespeople picking up the phone, phoning those people to say, why you want to deal with those people, let's deal with us. So there's definitely a level of governance and control that you should be thinking about before you decide to embark on the Power Platform journey within your organisation. And this is where people, they don't consider, should we enable it now or should we enable it well? What I would say is you have to enable it well, because what will happen is if you just enable it now without any real thought or consideration of security, control, governance, what's going to happen is you're going to end up either turning it off and annoying a lot of users because all of a sudden those nice applications that they've built to solve their problems are no longer available to them, or you're going to spend a lot of time talking to someone like me trying to work out how we fix it. And unfortunately, the majority of the time, people have enabled it now. I don't entirely blame organisations. This is a symptom of the Microsoft marketing machine. Microsoft are great at marketing the Power Platform, giving it away as part of Office 365 licenses. So all of a sudden, everybody has access to it. And a lot of IT departments weren't necessarily aware what it was when they were just turning on Office 365 licenses, and they didn't turn it off. And as users do, they play about and discover this great technology. So what we have to look at is, if you've enabled it now, what do we do about it? Yes, one option is to turn it off, but I found that that's not necessarily the best option, because as I say, you do tend to annoy all of the users that have built all these great applications to help them with their day-to-day job, because it's a great tool for that, by turning it off on them. What we more focus on is how do we fix what's happened, how do we get that under control, and get into the situation where you've enabled it well. Quick quiz or an opinion. Do you implement governance or controls? Hands up for governance. Hands up for control. Oh, nobody likes to be controlled, eh? So there is an element of both. When you start to engage with your users and start to help enable them, there is definitely a level of governance. So for me, the difference between governance and control is governance is giving them the ability to self-manage, to be able to self-regulate. Control is stopping them from doing it completely. People don't like being controlled. They don't like being told what to do. But unfortunately, with technology, there does need to be a balance. So the Twitter example where he was posting information from his CRM system out into Twitter, that's a good example where you probably want to implement control. You don't want your CRM data to be able to communicate with social media connectors, for example. You don't want them to be able to post on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. Especially for salespeople. Marketing, you might want them to be able to have that ability, but you would open that up for them on a very specific use case, as opposed to just enabling CRM talking to Twitter. It ends badly. So that would be an example of where you would control. But I found that within organisations you get much better traction and you get a much better enablement with your users and much more empowerment from them when you introduce governance, which is more of a set of guidelines to help them with their journey, to help them understand that actually the actions that they perform do have consequences. So, within the Power Platform, there's lots of different ways to manage and control and govern what you're doing. A lot of this also applies to Dynamics 365 for the Dynamics 365 users. So what you've got is you've got various different levels of access strategy that you can implement. What I would do and what I tend to do is, if I speak to an IT department, they say, I want to lock everything down, don't want them to be able to do anything, they have to come to us for approvals for everything, which from an IT department point of view, I can understand. What you tend to find is IT control the budget, so they do tend to have a bit of say in that. But what you want to do is within your organisation, you want to engage with both the IT department and the business users, and you need to find a level of middle ground. Because otherwise what will happen is IT will end up fighting with the business over what's happening within the applications. And there's a balance to strike, because what's happened is you might go too far one way. If you go too far into the IT camp, you end up in a situation where IT control everything and they're still the bottleneck for building applications. If you go the other way into the business and enable them to do what they want, what will happen is IT will say, that's fine, but we're not supporting any of that stuff. Come to us when it goes wrong and we'll just tell you, no, we're not dealing with it, sorry, not our problem. So you definitely need to get a balance between your business users and your IT department in order for them to work harmoniously together to be able to really utilise the platform. But in terms of initial governance and controls that I would implement is data loss prevention is an absolute critical one. As I say, you don't want your business critical data going walkabouts through a flow out into the web. So one of the first tasks that I would complete is looking at connector access and data loss policies and enable your business and non-business connectors as a very first step. Make sure your CRM system, your finance system is connected as a business connector and everything else can go into the non-business, and don't let them talk. And that is one of the main controls that I would implement. In terms of other controls, you do have things like security permissions on who can access what data, etc. And that is where you start to compromise. Again, from a business point of view, they're like, I want access to everything, but you do have to consider what is the purpose of that. So really finding that balance of access versus actually what you're doing with it. You can then, again, look at encryption infrastructure as a secondary piece. With it being the Power Platform, a lot of this is already implemented for you. And I find 9 times out of 10, the default out of the box is suitable for most small to medium organisations. It's only when you get into the big enterprise that they have to start looking more at infrastructure and networking around VPN access to data, etc. How many people that use the Power Platform have deployed the Centre of Excellence toolkit? One person. Excellent. So, as part of a Power Platform adoption, I would always recommend installing the Centre of Excellence Starter Kit. It's a really good set of tools that gives you visibility, particularly if you're in more of the IT side of the business. It allows you to have that visibility of what is happening within your organisation. It gives you a set of out-of-the-box reports and functions that lets you see what applications people have built, what connectors they're using, where have they built them, particularly for your more multinational type companies. Who's building the most apps? Is it some random business person that's just churning out app after app, or actually are they thought through before they're built? So there's some really good reports and information that comes straight out of the box from these solutions that you can just install. The other thing that you can do as part of that is you can control who's got access to particular apps. So again, good, easy to use, bit of functionality that allows you to say this group of people can have access to that type of app, this group of people can't. So again, you might not want salespeople to have access to a finance app. And again, it's all done from within the construct of the Centre of Excellence Toolkit. And this is, as I said, from a DLP point of view, a data loss prevention, this is what I would look at setting up first. So what this effectively says is that anything within the business column, within the first column there, is classed as business data. Then you've got non-business data, so you've got 445 of them versus 3. And what you can do is you can say, I don't want to allow business connectors to talk to non-business connectors. And automatically what will happen is if someone in your organisation builds a flow that connects your CRM database to Twitter, it won't run, it will fail. Because it will say, no, I can't talk to this person over here. So that's always a good one to implement. You do need to check these because Microsoft have as default in their DLP policy, set every other Microsoft product as business. So where that can become an issue is if you've got external users in your Teams environment, for example, you might not want your CRM data to be automatically published into your Teams environment because you don't want an external contractor who's got guest access having visibility of CRM data that's automatically being fed through. So it's just one to consider. But by default, I would tend to disable social media, particularly within enterprise. Nobody wants their business data to go walk about into social media, because once it's there, and your competitors see you've done it. It also comes with a set of dashboards as part of the COE toolkit. And what it allows you to do is manage your users and also your environments. So you're able to see, as I said, who's the people that are building all of these applications, where are they building them? So actually, are they all building them in test environments, their default environment, your production environment? So there's, again, some really good reporting that's available out of the box. And what you can do is, once you get through your enablement stage and you've got a good group of users working in the Power Platform, you can start to move into empowerment and working out how do we utilise the skills of that enabled group in order to support and nurture the group of people that are maybe not quite as engaged in the Power Platform, and those people become almost your evangelists for the technology. So there was a Gartner stat that I read that by 2025, 70% of all business applications are going to be built in a low-code or no-code environment. So those business users that are building applications today are going to have a lot of power in 2025, providing obviously those stats hold true. Word of caution, if you are an end user at the moment, if you've got people in your organisation who are at that level where they can pick up apps and build them, they might disappear off the partner side. Partners are going to pay more. So yeah, just to make sure that you incentivise those people to stay. What you can also do is, from that overall dashboard, you can drill down and look at more detailed information for individual apps. So you can see who's got access to particular apps, are they Canvas apps, model-driven apps, when were they last modified, when were they created, when were they last used, which again is useful from a maintenance of the environment, because what we often find is that the Power Platform only becomes a problem when IT start getting bills for additional storage, or they get that daily email of you're reaching your 5% left, you've got 2% left, you're over capacity, and that's when we tend to see it, because before that, IT, because they didn't have visibility of what was happening in the environments, they didn't necessarily know. So these are some really good reports, again, available as part of the starter kit, that allows you to really analyse what applications are being used, where are they being used, who are they being used by. So with all that information, what you can start to do is use that skill set that you have internally, all of those app makers, evangelists that you have in your organisation, and really educate the rest of your user base. What we find is that most of the Power Platform deliverables that we find successful are where they've got a really good core group of users in the business that can almost act as salespeople for the application into the rest of the business. And it's working with those people to work out actually how do we go and empower all these other users. You might only get them to build a simple Canvas app that they click a button that turns on their out of office, but it's something that saves a bit of time for them and it gets them more engaged in that Microsoft kind of overall stack. And being Microsoft, there's a connector for every other Microsoft product. So if you're using Outlook, Teams, there's lots of wee productivity tools that you can build that really save you time. As I say, turning on your out of office. How many people go out and forget to turn on their out of office? Whereas if you've got it as an app on your phone, push the button, all of a sudden you're out of office. Oh, I'm back now, push it again. Communication is key in the whole sale of the Power Platform. And this is one of the reasons that I get involved when it goes wrong, because there's not been any communication. they've turned it on inadvertently through Office 365 licenses, and the users have found it by themselves. So what I would suggest is, if you're looking to adopt a Power Platform in your organisation, make sure your communication strategy is absolutely key, and make sure it's there in terms of what is the Power Platform, what should it be used for, what is our guidelines for what you should and shouldn't be using it for, what is the governance, the protection policies that we have in place. Educate the users, bring them on that journey, and build that community. It's a community-led tool. If you look at the Microsoft events, it's community events. Microsoft don't run events of this size, other than obviously the 2 per year. The majority of these events are community-led, and it's about how do you bring this sort of community inside your organisation. And copy what the communities are doing. Run a hackathon, do training sessions, build an application catalogue, a maker portal, run idea workshops. And again, a lot of these things are available as part of the COE Starter Kit. You'll be able to get hackathon content online. You'll be able to get app in a day, Flow in a day, Power BI in a day. It's all freely available to you to use. You just go and download the content. It'll have the slide, the assets, and it'll allow you to run these things inside your own organisation. This is one of the kind of learning portals that's part of the COE Starter Kit as well. So you can deploy this, and it's as simple as it's got a brief definition of what is Power Automate, what is Power Apps, what is Power BI, and then it's got some links to learning materials. So it'll take you to the app and day content, it'll take you to the learning portal, it'll take you to the exam content. And again, this is just another way of making sure your users, again, are aware of what the technology is and what the actions and what the consequences of those actions are. So again, educate your customers, your end client, your end user. Don't just let them run with it, because you will end up in a situation where you do lose control. The other piece that you've got as part of that is you can run training events. So again, you can schedule training events and have users sign up to it for themselves. This is probably more applicable to the larger side of the enterprise, where they've got lots and lots of users they might have rolled this out to. And you can schedule training courses. And again, I would get those original app makers, evangelists running these. Might have the support of a partner, but ultimately try to run these internally, because what you'll find is somebody that understands the business process is more likely to be able to communicate what the technology is good for, how to use it in the context of their business. It's all good and well me coming up here and talking about Contoso and sales opportunities, but for a lot of organisations, they don't talk in that language. So one of the clients that I've been working with recently is they sell houses, but they don't talk about leads or opportunities. It's all about reservations, and it's just a different language that they use. So again, it's much better to engage with them on a language that they understand, which is why that internal evangelist will do a much better job than an external. This is verging back into the controls. So this is quite good, again, more from an IT point of view. So one of the things that you can implement as part of the starter kit is the maker assessment. And what this effectively is that before you get given access to go and create an application, you effectively have to submit a proposal for it. And you have to answer some set questions. And again, you can customize these questions with specific questions that are applicable to your organisation. So out of the box, it does have stuff like, do you need to work offline? Are you going to have to run some workflows? Do you need support? AI models? Do you need connectors? So effectively what it's doing is it's kind of enforcing the business user to think about what they're going to build before they just go ahead and build it. And then someone from IT to say, yep, that's okay. Because actually, yeah, we can give you access to that connector, no problem at all. But if they say, I want to post opportunities to Twitter, they're going to say, but actually, no, from a company policy point of view, we're not going to enable CRM to Twitter as a connector. Sorry, you can't build that application. Or you need to go and get further justification to be able to do it. Again, because it is in that Microsoft ecosystem, the other thing that you can do is you can integrate your Power Platform COE with Teams. So again, any of the applications that are part of the starter kit are part of Teams. So you can have your maker portal, your assessment questionnaire as part of your Teams environment. So they don't even have to go to make.power apps anymore. They can do all of them within Team. And they've also implemented a wee bot that effectively asks for feedback on what are we doing well in terms of our Power Platform implementation and what are we doing badly. So for the people who have got kind of Power Platform, what type of things have you been using it for? Does no one want to admit what they're using it for? Anyone? No? So the people who said they had it at the beginning, do you have it and just not using it?
So some examples where we've used it, customers, mainly apps, desk booking apps, being able to book time off, sick, holiday, that type of thing, that we can integrate with SharePoint, things like that. We're using use a lot of the templates as well, like employee ID or things like that, we can
Yep.
customize. Yeah, so it's end user focused apps that they can integrate with.
Yeah, absolutely. And the example you gave are a real good positive thing that's come out of things like COVID. COVID has definitely accelerated the journey in terms of do we go and employ an application developer or do we build something very quickly ourselves in a low code, no code. There was a 2-week downturn right at the very beginning of COVID where everybody stopped working, nobody was signing off any work, and then people realised that there wasn't an end to this anytime soon, and what we found was that we got much busier because all of a sudden there was lots of organisations who had all these employees who now needed to work either fully remotely or hybrid, and it's definitely accelerated the Power Platform as a platform and a technology. Unfortunately, we're now seeing the results, as I said, of people who just turned it on versus the people who thought about it before they did. And it's all about enabling your end users, enabling your IT departments. The IT world's changing. It's no longer you have to go to IT to get sign-off for a new application. Most big organisations aren't working in that way, and they don't want to be working in that way because what happens is IT becomes responsible for everything and they become a bottleneck to innovation, to success. So by enabling and empowering your end users, it really gives you the ability to be innovative, much more quickly. And it's really good from a point of you can build it quickly, you can fail quickly. So rather than spending 6 months writing a requirements document for a new application, or a new bit of technology, or a new bit of software, just go and work out what your base requirements are, start building it. You might find that none of your users will ever adopt it, in which case you throw it away and move on to the next idea. So it's very much around rapid deployment, rapid success, or ultimately rapid failure. I know a lot of Dynamics 365 partners that are now building prototypes in Power Apps rather than doing wireframes because it's much more efficient to do it that way. The client likes it, great, turn it on, let's productionise it, as opposed to spending a lot of time doing waterfall documentation, wireframing, just build it. So yeah, so the main takeaway from this session is think about it before you turn it on, have a plan and a strategy in place, because otherwise it will go wrong. You will end up with lots of applications that you don't know what's happening in them, you don't know where the data is going, and generally by the time you find out, it's too late. Any questions? Yes?
It's just to pick up on the point you were talking about there, things get built, then our data protection officer has a heart attack because of the data that's going on, and then goes, where's the data protection impact assessment that's being done? How are you dealing with those channels without stopping innovation so people
Yes.
can get on with it? Because it's almost that's becoming a block that you need to do all this documentation
Yep.
before you can write it.
Yes. So the way that we bring it around that is we involve your data protection team with the initial setup of the platform. So they've already agreed a base set of connectors that they're happy for the organisation to use. And that's one of the bits that the maker assessment comes into play. If someone wants to use a non-approved connector, or just one that hasn't been looked at yet by the data protection team or the legal team, etc., that they would then submit an application to say, this is the use case that we have, this is the risk involved in it, and then a decision is made on, do we enable it for that very one single use case, or do we enable it organisational wide?
I know that's okay because even some people developing don't actually understand what type of data they're actually going to have in the application.
Yes.
For a great idea, but don't know personal, sensitive,
Yeah.
etc.
And that's it. But if you take your data protection and your data loss protection policies further, you can turn on functionality to do things like, example, identify phone numbers, credit card numbers, email addresses, and you can get really granular on what data can and can't go out of that. So there is the functionality there, because you've got the same functionality as you do within Office 365, within Dynamics, sitting there for you to use. Just a lot of people don't bother.
Yeah, with the Office 365, people are seeing a lot more data than they realise they could see,
Yes.
or maybe should not see.
Yep.
And then this is the next part of that journey.
Again, it's part of that Microsoft marketing machine of, we do all this for you. It's no, they give you the ability to manage it and deal with it, but you have to take the time and really think about what data do we need to stop, because things like credit card numbers, etc., are fairly standard across all businesses, but there will be data specific to your business that is business critical and business sensitive that you don't want to be leaving.
I don't know if it's not really governance related, but when do you find customers get to require additional licensing for Power Apps? Is that when they're looking at certain connectors, or is there a way to, do you find that out up front, or is the...
Yeah, so it depends. So more often than not, it happens when they're moving away from just allowing their users to do personal productivity apps in the default environment, and they want to start looking at more either team level or business level applications, and they realise that in order to use solutions and environment management, they need the licenses.
Yeah.
And that tends to be where that point comes up. Or they're trying to use a premium connector. And they can, and that's when, again, they look at licenses.
Unlicensed.
Yes, the ever-changing goalposts. Any more questions? Still got 10 minutes. No? Yeah, again, I'd just like to thank the sponsors of the session and the sponsors of the conference, and hope everyone has a great time for the rest of the next couple of days. Thank you very much.